G'day and welcome to Pellowe Talk. I'm Dave Pellowe. This episode I want to show you a person that I've discovered on Twitter who calls himself Progressive Dad. Now, Progressive Dad is basically your iconic leftist. He embodies every argument, label, rhetoric, cliche, and piece of propaganda, three-word slogans that you can imagine. And being a open-minded conservative, I like to think that I don't live in an echo chamber, and I want to invite people into this somewhat conservative space to allow our ideas to be challenged and to allow other people the opportunity to persuade us that they are right and we are wrong. And so with that kind of open-handed attitude, I'd like to welcome Progressive Dad to the show. What should I call you? Dad or Progressive or PD? Welcome to the show.
Uhuru, Dave. And let's be under no illusions here. I'm pretty sure that this is just your typical conservative hit job. I'm prepared, but call me Progressive Dad. We're not that close yet. And we'll see how it goes.
Well, I like to think that by the end of any conversation or debate that my ideological opponent, if not agreeing with me, can at least see I'm not trying to do a hit job on them, but rather just to get to truth. I'm not hoping that I win this debate. I don't think it's a contest, and I'm not trying to make you lose. What I'm hoping is that we can discover truth between us, and that way I think everybody can win. But as a way of introduction to you, I'd like to introduce the audience into the work that you're doing. I'm absolutely loving your videos, perhaps for different reasons than you intended. But let's have a look at the first one.
Hi there, and welcome to Progressive Dad TV. This week, I give you a rare glimpse inside the life of an urban vegan. And I invite you on a foraging trip with me and show you how you can feed a family of 4 for absolutely nothing. Stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this one. I'm vegan. Now if you're not, I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you. And I hate you a little bit too. Meat is murder. And if you're capable of eating something with a face, then you're absolutely capable of eating your own babies. That's not opinion, that's fact. They have faces too. You are a cannibal, and just because you haven't tasted human flesh yet doesn't mean that you won't in the future. Where do you draw the line? So this week, I'm going to show you how to be a better person, like me. Because I'm a vegan, I'm morally superior to you. I'm more self-confident, and I'm more in touch with nature, because I give my kids a natural and healthy diet. Tell you what, I am excited to get stuck into this. Let's have a go. Yeah, look at that goodness.
So that was a sneak preview for the guests. Look, it's full of interesting content in between the beginning and the ending of that video, so not too many spoilers for everybody, but let's start with the obvious. You didn't actually seem to be enjoying that preparation too much.
Yeah, okay. That particular batch, okay, maybe you went, I might have gone a little too heavy on the spices or something. Typically, it's absolutely fantastic, top notch. You can guaranteed feed a family of 4 minimum all winter long if you just know what you're doing and
right.
If you just know where to look. My number one tip, however, you need to get out early enough in autumn to get ahead of the squirrels. Those furry little, am I allowed to say furry little bastards? Because that's what they are. Those furry little bastards will clean it all up. They'll hoover them up. There'll be nothing left, okay? And that adds that little bit of crunch, that little bit of fiber to your meal that's important for you and your family all winter.
Right. Now, tell me about exactly, I think one of the pertinent things I'd like to challenge, just with respectfully and intellectual honesty with you, feelings aside, what makes you think you're morally superior to people who aren't vegan?
Well, it's quite simple, Dave. Meat is murder. As I clearly state there, are you a family man, Dave?
Yes, absolutely.
And your kids, have you 1, 2?
3 kids, actually. Yeah.
3 kids. Do they have faces, Dave?
Yes, they have faces. So, look, I can see where you're going with this. You're suggesting that everything with a face
That's right,
has
Dave.
the same moral and ethical value as anything else with a face.
That's right, Dave. If it has a face, it's not. It's 2 things, Dave. There's an ethical question here, but there's also a much more practical concern I have, which is if you can eat a cow, a chicken, anything with a face, then what's stopping you eating your own kids, Dave? It's only a very small step to cannibalism. Well, so there's a moral point of view and there's a practical issue at hand.
I think there's a giant leap between eating a cow and eating your children. I don't think it's a small step at all. In fact, I'd actually argue that animals probably have no compunction eating each other when they're the carnivore type of animal. Do you think they're morally inferior to you as well?
I'm going to hit you with a knowledge bomb right here, Dave. Little thing called World War I. World War II. You ever hear of those?
Were those
man
wars
against man.
Were those wars fought in the name of hunger? Did they eat the dead? Was that the purpose of the slaughtering?
Pretty sure they were. I'm
to
pretty
stock
sure
the supermarkets
on the Eastern Front, cold up, that long march towards Russia, back out of Moscow. I'm certain that happened. I have no doubt in my mind it happened, Dave. The point is that man is equally capable of brutality as animals are. You're trying to twist this conversation. You're trying to twist this and somehow make off that we're somehow more moral than animals. Well, I'll tell you what, there's nothing moral about eating animals. There's nothing moral about eating anything with a face, Dave.
So
are you a vegetarian, Dave?
Are you suggesting that World War I could have been avoided if those in power at the time had have all been vegans?
You have no idea of what meat does to the body, the hormonal imbalances, the aggression. I would say soy makes up the majority of my diet. I've never felt so relaxed, so calm. I go regularly to yoga. I can guarantee you that had the populations of Western nations engaged in a soy-based diet, had they gone regularly to yoga, there would absolutely not have been any World War I or II. And Dave, you're avoiding the big point here, which is the inherent and deeply encoded in the DNA violence of the white man.
Right. So white men are racially inferior to people of color. Is that your assertion?
Well, let's back up here now again. I knew this was going to be a hit job, Dave, but let me throw this back on you.
Oh, not at all. It's not a hit job. Let's just
hang on.
Let's just test the integrity of your ideas.
Can I talk here, Dave, please?
Yeah, by all means. But it's not a hit job.
Okay, Dave. Okay, you'll get... Can I talk? I came on here in good faith, Dave. I'm not an expert in Australian history, but let me hit you with this, and you tell me how accurate this is, and then you tell me how moral is the white man, okay? Is it correct that the white man on horseback came to that continent and essentially created mass genocide of the native population? When they were not successful in that, Dave, is it not true that they built a long fence, I think it was a rabbit-proof fence or something, that basically it was to stop the Aboriginal people finding their way down to Sydney? And is it not also true, Dave, that when that failed, you essentially took all of the children away from Aboriginal people? And what did you do, Dave? You built monuments to these white people. You built statues to these people. So you're trying to tell me that Australia is not a nation built on white supremacy and that the white man is somehow superior to the native population? You'll have some convincing to do, Dave.
The answer to your question is no. No. White man is not a genocidal maniac in all his presentations and iterations. Colonialism
why didn't you force all of your native people into compounds and supply them, push upon them alcohol to try and ruin them, break their spirit? It's the exact same as Americans have done. You follow the same model as in America, as in Canada. You know, I'm sure they did it in South Africa. Everywhere the white man has gone and colonized, death and destruction of the native population has followed. And Dave, you'll have some job convincing me otherwise.
Well, yeah, look, I probably believe you on that. I will have some job convincing you otherwise. The facts seem to be somewhat elusive to you and highly misrepresented. But leaving that aside, let's agree to disagree on the way you present those questionable facts. Let me ask you this.
I just presented the facts, Dave. That's an ad hominem.
Let me ask you this. What colour are you? Are you a white man?
Again, classic. Dave.
No, it's a very simple question. What you're asserting is that all white men are unable to escape their identity, and their ideas are not able to transcend the worst of their history, and they are therefore all equally guilty and responsible, and their character cannot mature or evolve beyond the worst of their history. Therefore, yourself being a white man, you're a terrible person.
Yeah, I am. On some level, of course, Dave. I'll happily admit that. Yes.
Let me flip this back around, because I don't want to do ad hominem on you.
Carries a history. This skin carries a history, Dave. That's true.
Let me cut you off there, just to prove I'm not trying to do ad hominem. I disagree with you. I don't think you're a terrible person. I don't think you're incapable of rising above isolated incidents in your history. No, I don't think you're even incapable of rising above patterns in your ancestors' history. I think you're capable of original ideas. Evidence may be lacking. Sorry, that was a bit of ad hominem. But, those things aside, I think you are the self-defeating argument of white supremacy. You're actually saying that you're not a white supremacist, and therefore not all whites are white supremacists. It's a self-defeating argument. You offering this argument just doesn't have any logical consistency to it, Progressive Dad.
I had a look at your website before I came on here, and I did have this sense of that I was dealing with a hugely self-righteous and privileged individual. And I have to be honest with you, Dave, and I'm sorry. I mean, I came here in good faith, and like I said, I don't deal in ad hominems, but this was a statement absolutely dripping with privilege. Okay, you sit there as a native Australian, an Aboriginal, and you tell me that whiteness doesn't matter. And we're dealing with two different things here. We're dealing with biological whiteness, and whiteness is a social construct. So whiteness, biological whiteness here is a question of melanin. So I think, first of all, I have a number of thoughts on this. The first thing I think about whiteness from a biological perspective is, this is a concept, white and black, that again, when we talk about this, we often infer a lot from the US debate about race. And often white and black, it comes from this colonial perspective, with black having a negative or a subservient connotation and white. I actually would prefer to talk about not black and white, but melanin rich and melanin deficient. And I believe that could help this conversation rebalance and reshape how it is that we interact with each other. And I think that's very important in taking people like you, quite frankly, Dave, away from this privileged position in which you sit, in which you lecture me and lecture people of color about equality.
What privileges do I have that you don't have?
Dave, I would say that you and I are both incredibly privilleged. The only difference is I seem to acknowledge that, and I work every day to pay restitution for what my ancestors have done. It seems, Dave, you're very far away from accepting that you live in a country, and don't get me wrong, I love Australia, I love Foster's, I love Skippy, I love Don from what's his face, Alf Stewart, the Bee Gees, Germaine Greer, an amazing woman. But if you can't acknowledge the fact that your country was won by the white man at the end of a lance, it's dripping in the blood of the natives, that's to me, that's disgusting, Dave. I have no problem acknowledging that bloody history. You do.
Yeah,
and does that mean? And so, are you an example of this moral white man that you were telling me about earlier, Dave? This difference between the animals and the men. I tell you what, I've never met an animal that denied its fundamental existence, its fundamental characteristics and being, Dave. But I've met you.
Look, the question that needs answering is can someone evolve and mature beyond the inheritance that they've been given? Let's say we take a revisionist approach to history, as you do, and completely have this black armband, white guilt view of everything that ever happened, completely dismissing all the benefits and positives and inheritances of culture and technology and medicine and society that have been brought to the various cultures that have been the beneficiaries of colonization, and that is not also that is also not to dismiss the things that we can learn from and do better in the future. But that is the point, is there is a mix in history of good things and bad things, and you seem to be obsessively blinkered with the negative things while claiming to be able to move on from them and evolve and attain a better character yourself. But listen, what I want to have a look at next is your ideas on
cut me off, Dave. Cut me off when you can't win the argument.
We are short of time, but look, we can continue the various rabbit trails on Twitter. I'm sure
conservatives
that'll be a lot
do
of
it
fun.
every time. When you're losing, Dave, when you're losing, they cut you off, cut the mic.
Let's have a look at your suggestions on breastfeeding for dads.
Hi there, and welcome to Progressive Dad TV. This week we're talking about breastfeeding, and no, I don't mean the kind of breastfeeding your conservative Christian parents did. This is 2017, and as every woke parent knows, in 2017, male breastfeeding is lit. This week I'm showing progressive dads how to breastfeed, and I take to the streets to fight for their right to do so. I'm a feminist, and as a feminist, I can tell you definitively that gender is a social construct, and part of that construct is the myth that men can't breastfeed. For centuries, men have forced women to breastfeed their children, essentially so they can control them, hold them prisoner in their own homes while the men are off doing whatever it is they want to. Breastfeeding is the pinnacle of patriarchal oppression. And you know what? It's time that men were forced to pay reparations. That's right. It's time for men to breastfeed their own children. Now, before you embarrass yourself by saying, "Oh, men aren't biologically capable of breastfeeding their young," go read your Darwin. That's right. In The Descent of Man, Darwin clearly proves that men are biologically capable of breastfeeding their young, and our early ancestors certainly did. And then he gets sidetracked about the perfect shape and form of the male nipple. It gets weird, but look, the point stands. Also, the Aka Pygmies of Central Africa breastfeed their young when their wives are away. That's right. Long story short, men can and should breastfeed. And for the doubters, #check yourself before you wreck yourself. Okay, so we know that men can breastfeed, but centuries of toxic masculinity has meant that we no longer do so. In order for progressive dads to be able to proudly breastfeed their young in public, we need to do two things. Firstly, we need to figure out how to bring our milk in. And secondly, we need to tear down the taboo that surrounds male breastfeeding.
Dad lives matter! Dad lives matter! Dad lives matter! Hey, hey! Oh, oh! Hey, hey!
So, there you have it. This week, we fought the patriarchy and we won greater freedoms for breastfeeding dads everywhere. And thanks to our friends on ChristianForum.com, we now know that a simple trip to our doctor to prescribe a dose of prolactin allows men to breastfeed anytime, anywhere they choose. Thanks for watching, and remember, tune in again next week when I tell you why science is a social construct and why you need to organise a boycott of your local university should they continue to fund hatred through biology departments.
You can't be serious. Surely you can't be serious.
What's wrong, Dave? Are you not a man of science?
Well,
Science is clear.
I thought you said science was a social construct.
Yeah, but in this case, Dave, it's pretty clear, I would say. Darwin, I don't think any of us are going to disagree with the descent of man on this one. He has clearly presented evidence that our early ancestors breastfed. I've given you the anthropological evidence of the Acapygmies who breastfeed. And I showed you, and Dave, I'm surprised with you actually, because it was from christianforums.net that showed me that all you need to do is go to your local GP and get him to prescribe some prolactin, and off you go. You can breastfeed your own children. Would you breastfeed your children, Dave?
So science isn't a social construct?
Why are you dodging the question, Dave? Would you have a problem as a man breastfeeding your children?
I'm sticking to the question. The question was, is science a social construct or not? And you gave me a whole heap of science to explain why you think, or alleged science, why you think breastfeeding is natural and biological for men. But you conclude your video by saying science is a social construct. So without moving on to your follow-up question, let's stick to the topic. Do you believe science is a social construct or not? Because you're arguing science.
Dave, I think, yes, science is a social construct, but...
So do you have any non-scientific arguments why men should be breastfeeding their children?
Have you never wanted to feel closer to your kids, Dave? Have you never seen your wife cozy up and see the bond, the beautiful bond between a mother and her child, and just think to yourself, man, I want that closeness, that bond? Have you never imagined just that little thing just latched on, Dave, and just that closeness? That's not something you ever think
my three children having been breastfed by their mother, that is not something I would want to endure. Yes, there is an emotional connection from it, but it looks terribly uncomfortable and painful.
Well, I would have thought you, big, rough and tough Aussie guy, would have loved that, Dave. I thought that, a little bit of pain, that would be nothing to you. Big outback man, no? Remember, Dave,
you're hilarious,
There's
progressive
no shame
dad.
in it. There's no shame in it.
There's no shame in what? Sorry, I was laughing. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, well, there you go. See, I knew it was going to be just a hit piece, Dave. What I said is that real men can breastfeed, and there's no shame in it. And I opened that video, you might remember, by saying that this, forget your conservative Christian parents. But Dave, it would seem to me that you are about a generation behind on this one. Real men breastfeed.
I might be a generation behind, but I'm about a few thousand generations up to date of how procreation and your favorite scientist Charles Darwin has said. So evolution has tended to favor those traditional gender roles somewhat. Oh, sorry if that triggered you. I should have issued a trigger warning. Yes, I do believe in traditional gender roles where mothers are the ones with the wombs and the lactating breasts, and men are the ones who plant the seed and teach the guys teach the kids later in life.
So Dave, I give you the example of the Acapygmies in Central Africa. Are you refusing their existence? Are you refusing to acknowledge their existence? Are you saying that they're not real men?
I haven't examined that evidence to see the context and the veracity of it. I'd happily
What kind of a show is this, Dave? You don't do your fact checks.
Yeah, it's a good point. Tell you what, let's get the link off you. I promise, in the spirit of open-handedness, we will put the links that you provide to that research beneath the video so people can check that out for themselves. I guess the
point
immediate...
about science is a social construct, Dave. What I will say is that, again, you're very good at picking and choosing your facts, your hate facts, Dave. That's what I would say.
Not at all. I'd suggest...
Don't talk to me about science, Dave. I presented you with the science, but you like to pick and choose.
No. I think you're picking and choosing. I think there's one anthropological evidence that you've offered without conceding it's until I've examined it closely. But by the same token, by picking only one, it seems that you're the one picking and choosing in the absence of the overwhelming weight of anthropological evidence, both historically and geographically. So is it me picking and choosing, or is it you, progressive dad?
Well, let's focus on you and what you're doing here, Dave. You're saying that if it was good enough for my parents, it's good enough for me. I mean, there's a lot of weird things our parents did and our grandparents. Well, what's your basis for your assertion that men are the breadwinner and that women should breastfeed the kid? What's the basis in fact or in culture for that, Dave?
Well, see, unlike you, I actually do believe in science, and I reject the assertion that it's a social construct. And the biological evidence is absolutely conclusive that it is the woman's role to breastfeed and provide nourishment for her newborn children.
And to stay at home? Can she wear shoes, Dave?
Look, it's...
Does she wear a potato sack too, Dave?
Look, no, I don't think potato sacks are...
Should we beat her, Dave?
Maybe it's an Irish fashion trend, but potato sacks aren't
Closed
terribly...
hand or open hand, Dave?
Look, no, we don't beat our wives either. You're right. As rough and tough men, we are still capable of tenderness and affection, and beating our wives is not the way it happens. But I'm well and truly distracted.
You're a poster boy for toxic masculinity, Dave. You're exactly. I don't know if you noticed, but one of my major
what's
areas...
toxic about affirming the beauty of femininity?
The beauty of femininity?
Yeah.
I mean...
Why would I want to undermine, dilute, and diminish the beauty of all that is woman? Why would I want to steal
You think locking a woman up at home, Dave? Why don't you lock her in the basement and attach that kid to her 24 hours a day? Locking a woman up at home, not letting her go out to work, not letting her be the fullness that she can be the breadwinner. That's beautiful to you, Dave, is it? That is toxic masculinity. You're exactly who I'm talking about when I campaign for male fetus abortion. Men, and it's particularly Western white men, are responsible for the majority of domestic abuse, the majority of violent acts, murder, rape, date rape, and so on. This is toxic masculinity, Dave. You don't even see it, you don't hear it, because you don't have enough self-reflection, but you are a poster boy for toxic masculinity.
Let me get a question in here, if I may, just to challenge some of your presuppositions, assuming you're okay with that. May I? Yeah. Are you, and there is a follow-up question, so don't take this as a opportunity to soapbox, but just a simple yes or no question. Are you opposed to cultural appropriation?
Of course.
Okay. Why aren't you opposed to gender appropriation?
What do you mean, Dave?
Well, you're wanting to usurp traditionally feminine roles such as breastfeeding your children. I don't think there's any opaqueness to this question at all. You're clearly trying to take over the role of women and erase the delineating biological differences between men and women. We do have another video I want to share with people, but I'll give you a chance to respond.
It's okay. No, don't try and change the. No,
you just seem to be struggling, so I wanted to be generous.
Struggling, yeah. You'd love to think that, Dave. All right. I'll answer your question. First of all, there's a major difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. Just as I am wearing this beautiful dashkini. I wear this not to appropriate African culture. I wear this to empower black male voices on social media. I'm using this to make a strong message for black men who don't have a voice of their own. And this is so it's cultural appreciation. And it's the same thing with gender. There's gender appropriation, which, fair enough, if I were to breastfeed my own kid out of a selfish drive because, let's say, I got titillated or I got off on that would be weird, but it's cultural appreciation. I want to support my wife. I want her to be able to go out of the house. I want her to be able to work a full-time job. I want her to be able to go out with the girls for a cocktail, whatever it is she wants to do, and know that her husband is at home with her kid and that child is being fed.
I think
Does that answer your question, Dave?
No, it doesn't, because you're redefining language to suit your agenda. At the very worst and at the very best, you're playing with semantics. It absolutely is the most obvious case of appropriation when you assume to usurp the role of and replace the role of a woman as the provider of nourishment to her newborn infant.
You're wrong, Dave. You're wrong, Dave.
Let's agree to disagree on that.
And cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, Dave. You might want to break out the dictionary.
Yes, I might. Let's have a look at your next clip.
A white supremacist. My 2-year-old daughter is a white supremacist. This has been the worst week of my life. Try and imagine this if you can. Picture the scene. So I'm at home with my daughter. Now, normally I would call her Ghostface. That's her preferred pronoun. But just to keep this simple, I'll refer to her as she, hers. So we're finishing up our favourite book. Black is Brown is Tan. I think, great, this has gone down very well. I think she's really getting this. I reach out for my cup of coffee to take a drink, but before I can even get it to my lips, she's dunked the head of her favourite white lamb fully into my cup of coffee and given it this lovely brown tan. Now, naturally, at first I'm thinking, yeah, she really gets it. My little girl really gets it. Black is brown is tan. And my daughter has chosen to embrace a transracial lamb. What happened next, though? Made me sick to my stomach. My own child, who I genuinely believed, had a handle on her own white privilege. Well, she proceeded to make that lamb dance for her own amusement. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't embracing this lamb's wish to self-identify as a black sheep, nor was she confronting and accepting the reality of racial dysphoria. Nope. This was blackface. And she was making this lamb dance for her own personal amusement. This was a minstrel show. How my little girl ended up putting on her own minstrel show, well, that just speaks to the inherent racist nature of her DNA coding as a white girl. Also, I think it speaks volumes for the institutionalized racism that's obviously rampant in her kindergarten. Needless to say, I'll be withdrawing her from any stage performances at that kindergarten for the foreseeable future. But this incident, well, this has left me with no option but to take immediate action. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to diversify your child's teddy bear collection so that this kind of thing can never happen again, so that we can stamp out child minstrel shows and racism. So then, your kids can enjoy the benefits of knowing how to check their privilege on a daily basis. And remember, teddy bears aren't just cute, fluffy, cuddly things to cradle or to nurse your little ones to sleep with. No, teddy bears are searing reminders of the historic abuses of the white man. There you have it. Make sure that every teddy bear in your child's crib tonight represents some crime or act of oppression by the white man that your child needs to make amends for.
You've got to be kidding. Your 2-year-old daughter's preferred pronoun is ghost face, and
That's right, Dave.
And she's a white supremacist.
That's right, Dave. I have very open, clear lines of communication with my children, and who am I to deny using her preferred pronoun? What do you call your kids, Dave?
Let's drill down on that. How exactly did you get your 2-year-old daughter to articulate to her that her preferred pronoun was Ghostface?
Well, Dave, as you can see from my channel, I'm at this point a pretty renowned social justice educator, and I've been teaching and tutoring my children from a very young age. I've been telling them about exactly the kind of things we've been talking about today, the grotesque history that we share. It's upsetting for me, Dave. I'm upset for two reasons here. I'm upset that I'm upset thinking about what we as a race have done. I'm upset that you can't acknowledge it here today. I'm upset that you played this video. Again, you claim this isn't some kind of ambush here today, but that was the worst day of my life, Dave. That was really a hard one for me, seeing that my daughter was a white supremacist, and you play this here for me and think, I know what you're doing. You're trying to throw me off my game emotionally. You think you're going to slip one over on me here, Dave, because I'm off kilter. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm proud. I'm proud I've had this conversation with my daughter. I'm proud that I talked to her about gender fluidity. I'm proud that I talked to her about multiple sexualities and sexual orientations at this age. And I'm proud that my daughter is going to go out into the world with your kids, Dave. And no offense, but what kind of kids are you raising? I'm pretty sure that my kid is going to influence this world for the better. And I hate to say it, Dave, but after talking to you here this evening, unfortunately, that's probably going to mean having to steamroll your kids.
Oh dear. So I don't know what to do with that.
I'll tell you, Dave. No, look. Okay, sorry. Maybe that was a bit of ad hominem, Dave. I'm sorry. That was a bit. Okay, apologize. It's an emotive topic. I still think that you played that clip to provoke a strong reaction. Here's what I would say, Dave. If your children are still young enough that they're playing with teddy bears, just remember that in a couple of days' time, your kind of people will be celebrating Xmas, as I would say, or I believe you call it Christmas. And I think it's a great opportunity for you to get out there and diversify your children's teddy bear collection.
Question without notice.
Gay bear, black bear, Latina bear.
What exactly do you do at Christmas time in your household?
Activism, Dave. Activism never sleeps for me. I'll be on social media throughout. We don't celebrate. There is no God, Dave. Sorry to break it to you. Guess what, Dave? There is no Santa and there is no God.
And that's what you tell to your daughter. No Christmas for you.
Course.
Let's go and protest for men breastfeeding.
Well, at the moment, actually, Dave, it's interesting we were talking about your bloody history there in Australia, because one of our big points of activism at the moment now will be bringing the older Shaniqua out with me. We'll be going out and one of our focuses of activism is we're going to be looking at the statues in our town here, and we're going to be engaging in our Convert, Don't Destroy project.
I saw that video.
Yeah,
that was a good video.
You've seen in the US how they're pulling down all these Confederate statues. I believe this is a great policy. I believe we should be tearing down all these symbols of white oppression and white supremacy in our towns. But Dave, as you've seen here today, I'm a reasonable guy. I always try to find a middle ground. So what I'm doing is, instead of tearing these down, I understand that might be offensive to some racists. What we do is we put, we wrap them in black cloth, burqa, if you will. And so we convert those statues to Islam. And what that does is twofold. First of all, it builds a common ground with the racists, but also I think it's very useful that we're all living in a very multicultural society anywhere in the West nowadays. We're a globalized world. I consider myself a global citizen. And I think it's a wonderful way of bringing Islam to the fore in a positive way. And you as a Christian man, I'm sure you'll appreciate and get behind that activism this Xmas.
Technical question. How do you reach the top of the statues? Do you put ghost face on your shoulders to put the burqa over the top of the offensive statues to convert them to Islam?
Don't be silly, Dave. She's too young for that. What she'll do is she'll wait at the bottom of the ladders. I'll go up, obviously, and I give her a little pole, a mop handle or something, and she'll put the burqa on top of the pole, and she'll just like hoist that up to me, and I'll just whack that over. Pretty simple, Dave.
Yes, simple.
See, you're just looking for problems, Dave. Like that's again. I would go out and do that, but how do I? It costs nothing to. Activism never sleeps, Dave. If you want to change the world for the better, you can. That's my message here today, Dave.
I don't know about you, but I've enjoyed this conversation. I enjoy being challenged in my white supremacist, white guilt, oppressive culture, and I
think I've represented my views well, and I think that if I have changed at least even one mind here today, it'll have been a good day's work.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope that you did feel like you got a fair hearing, and that you got to express and maybe convert a few people to leftism and progressivism. Progressive Dad, thank you very much for joining me on Pellowe Talk.
Uhuru, Dave.
That was Progressive Dad. If you'd like to see his videos, look for Progressive Dad on YouTube and follow the conversations and join in the debates on Twitter, where he's going off like a frog in a sock, and his Twitter handle is @ProgDadTV. And we'll put the links to that beneath the video, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Pellowe Talk.